Yes, guys, welcome back to the Cannon podcast, our main podcast on a Monday. Happy Monday, everybody. We are here. George is back after a very, very busy weekend.
Oh my goodness.
You were called in.
I was called in.
You couldn't watch the game live.
No. I had one of those, when you ever get like your manager, anybody that's listening, and you get like a last major deadline, and it was just craziness. I was telling Alex offline, I don't know if this might be too nerdy, but like part of my job, people may not know, like I'm a PhD candidate, so I work in hospitals and we do studies. And, part of that is like applying for grants, which is just to get really big money to live and do our professional work. And so one of our studies is we're trying to take pictures of kids to guess if they have sleep apnea, which is so apropos. I think.
You all know what I said. Everyone knows me now. You know what I said to George offline.
And I prefer not to speak.
I prefer not to speak. Marcel Skelly prefers not to speak either. To be clear, it's all about board. It's actually really cool. It's like basically using, as I understand it, AI to predict whether kids will have sleep apnea.
Yeah, so
That's so cool.
We've got so many kids. We're gonna try to recruit like over 1,000 kids, and the idea is like, we'll take pictures, and based on your anatomy and based on kind of your facial structure, we'll be able to predict kids that are likely to have like a sleep apnea, which is basically like when you have trouble sleeping and you snore a lot, but you stop breathing. So, really kind of cool technique. Yeah, but I had a lot of stuff. Really cool. So I had to write like 20 pages, double spaced at least, but in like 3 days.
Mad. Well, you had a mad weekend. And before we sort of get into Arsenal, it was a very good weekend sort of overall for Arsenal and sort of the Premier League. And so obviously City dropping points. How much? I mean, could you watch any of the United Spurs game?
Highlights so far, but I've got it recorded for later for dinner because it was you could just see the results coming in, mate, and it was kind of a case of it's feeding families. Let's put it that way.
It really is. Honestly, not to get nerdy, but like just go. It makes you realize when you watch how other teams are coached, because it's not the profiles anymore with Ten Hag. You watch the distances between the lines, how they jump. Every pass that Spurs play, United players jumping on it every single time. It's coaching. And when you see it from that perspective, and obviously, we're so lucky to have one of the best defensive coaches, one of the best coaches, but certainly one of the best defensive coaches in the world. He kind of teaches us the game. He's certainly teaching me the game, mate. And watching someone else, I can feel like I can, obviously I'm not saying I understand the football better than Ten Hag, but I'm sat there going, I see their problems, and it's obviously then it's the implementation, it's the skill. Yeah, but I feel like I see their problems, but that's because Mikel coaches us so well. It's such a nice feeling.
1,000,000%, and it's not even a case of you thinking that you're better than X, Y, and Z professional coaches. I think when you see excellence, you understand what it takes to become excellent. That's the case in any walk of life. You sat there and you're trying to, I don't know, even do well. Like whoever's listening, you're trying to do well in whatever your job you're doing. You're looking up to excellence to it. You're looking at a textbook. You're looking at books. You're looking at people that have excelled in your field, and you're able to starting to draw patterns, and you develop your own success. And we're all on that journey in terms of as fans trying to learn.
Don't cry.
Hello, frog. It's always early when we do these, so I hope people get it.
It's like 8 a.m. in Canada.
Yeah. And so, but the point is, you start to look to that, so then you can start to see successful patterns in the sport. And that is something that we can do as fans. So I think I'm in the same boat in terms of, that's Mikel teaching at me. And this is Mikel teaching us as fans and the world, by the way. He's putting on a clinic in terms of how to rebuild a squad, something that will be referenced for years. It's already being referenced, but it will be referenced, I think, for years in terms of when you look back at Arsenal's journeys and you talk about legacy in the first 5 years, how to rebuild a club that is struggling for identity to have an identity and begin to impose their identity. Because one thing that I really want to talk about in this pod, I believe Arsenal are imposing their identity in a way that I haven't seen before. And I'm really excited to talk about it in this match.
Yeah, we'll certainly get into that. But yeah, just to come back on that, I think like it's very easy from an external perspective to see what's going wrong. The difficulty and the place where I would have absolutely no clue where to start is the implementation. It's the coaching. It's to be able to go, right, okay, that's going wrong. How do I fix that? How do I get the buy-in? How do I get the principles in? How do I get the culture in? Like all that stuff. Like that is just, and to watch Mikel doing that, It's unbelievable. And yeah, I just love it. I love the way he's handled the media this week, which we can maybe get into a little bit later. I think we should have a little debrief about our debate because I think people probably want to hear it. So we'll save that to the end.
Again.
But yeah, we're not having a debate, but I think we should talk about it. But yeah, let's talk about Leicester because it was a great afternoon. I think you had the privilege of watching it with no worries. I maybe have I haven't actually watched it back and probably will do at some point, but yeah, I've sort of come away from it with that feeling from it. But equally, even with that feeling, the first half, I think you said it offline, was some of the best football I've seen us play, certainly this season and for a long time under Arteta. I think if you look at the numbers, I think the XG was up there like a 5 or something like that. I think Leicester were down at 0.2 post-shot XG or something and had 2 goals. The problem is you come away from these games and what you remember is the feeling. You remember the feeling of, oh God, we were under the cosh. Oh my goodness me. So it's hard to sort of separate that out from the clear-eyed analysis of actually what went down, what we were trying to do, the impact of Calafiori and all that stuff that we'll come to. But just from a slightly wider lens, I absolutely love, and one of the things that I came away from this was how brilliant we were, which we come to, but also another type of game we've played this year. This isn't a type of game we played so far in 24-25 where we've been absolutely all over them. Some freak stuff happens and we have to react. We have to react. And I genuinely, I know it's easy after the fact, but I can, people want proof. I can send them WhatsApp texts. I knew we'd come back. And that's a different feeling. That is a really different feeling. I think we were sort of creeping into that feeling at the end of last season, maybe, but knowing that we're going to respond, knowing we're going to react, pretty sure we're going to get that goal at some point if we just keep pushing. That's a flip, mate. That's a new Arsenal. That is what Arteta has brought us, and that's what Arteta is showing us.
I think that's your journey as a fan to feeling like we've arrived.
To trust.
And to me, there's so much to talk about on this game because I really think there was huge narratives that just weren't true. That was one of the most dominant matches I've seen from an Arsenal team, period. And by the way, I'd even go as far to say from 0 to minute 90. And when you actually break down the goals, and we'll get there, and when we talk about it, freak accidents in the game is something that you can't predict. And we're going to run into these games, by the way. Like, ignore the opposition. I think it's because it was Leicester and the name Leicester that people just said 5-0, move on. 5-0, move on, increase the goal difference. These were the narratives that were coming in. And this is why narratives, ironically, are important because they influence analysis, right? The narrative was Leicester at home, that's relegation fodder. I have seen us be very defensive the last couple weeks. I need to see us address our goal difference. I need a 5-0. I saw this game last year and it was 5-0 and it had 5-0 written all over it. That was the narrative entering the game. So then when you're in the match and they pull it level after 2-2, then your narrative starts to go, well, City just dropped points. We can't drop points this early into the title race. Oh my God. And you panic. And then you're saying the team panics when that isn't the case. It really wasn't the case at all.
You're imposing it.
But you're projecting your fears onto it. And at that point, the game for me, I knew we would score. It was absolutely inevitable. I had zero, like watching it, I obviously have the benefit of and hindsight of knowing the result. But
you literally did know we'd score. You knew the result.
but the way that the team was transmitting, there was zero for me. I was seeing online that there was issues in staleness in our possession and that we lost ideas. That was not the case. There was incredible patterns of play that were developing even in the second half. And I think what Ethan gave us was something really special, by the way, which is really worth talking about later on in the second half. But the team never slowed down for me. And there was, it wasn't just being in the final third, it was our tempo in the final third, which is something I hadn't seen against low blocks. One of the last things for us to destroy, in my opinion, last year was when we were facing stubborn low blocks or stubborn mid blocks, we had a tendency to slow our possession down, lack the switches, which we had in abundance, and not vary our central progression. All three of those things were things that were missing in mid block and low block situations last year. We had that in spades. And by the way, the people that we came in with substitutes in terms of Raheem Sterling, in terms of what he was able to give and the threat that he was able to give us, it reinforced those principles. So from a game perspective, I had trust. And just to end on that, I think your journey, when you talk about that, a lot of fans can relate to, and that's them and us as a club arriving, mate, as the dominant players. Like last year, we could win the title. This whole transition about us saying we will win the title is built on trust, is built on making sure that when things don't go our way, we will still score. And Fergie time, making that inevitability a consistent characteristic of a team as opposed to a trait is probably the biggest way of you talking about you arriving as a dominant title winner and not a title challenger. So I don't think this suddenly means, you know, I'm done. Like, I still have questions about the squad and things that we need to improve on. But that type of rhetoric is part of the journey about understanding and seeing a team that is going to be champions. And so that's what's exciting.
Yeah, it's like defining what is our Anfield, what is our Fergie time, what is our Gundogan at the back stick or whatever. Like what is our version of that? And to me, I think it's our ability to rise to every challenge. Well, firstly it's set pieces, but it's the ability at the moment, I think, to rise to every challenge, to rise to every different type of game. You know, Arsenal will be prepared. That is inevitable. And I hope that becomes, and we'll talk about sort of narrative and how much I think it's, you know, separate or different or whatever later. But for us as fans and for us to believe, but also for the players to believe, knowing that Arsenal will rise to every challenge, will rise to every type of game. We can low block you, we can mid block you, we can press you zonally, we can go man for man, we can sit in, we can attack you, we can defend the box, we can attack your box, set pieces, every single type of, if it's late, we might score, if it's early, we might come out the blocks. Every aspect of the game, and this is the thing that's been growing and growing over the last couple of seasons, is there, and it's so exciting. But how we actually implemented that was really cool, and I sort of love that you got to watch it from the beginning with that in mind. And let's start with Calafiori, because Calafiori's impact was absolutely unbelievable. I think I saw someone say something like, I haven't seen our left, I think it was Rimedy. Do you know Rimedy? I think he works for La Liga. Yeah, he talks about, I haven't seen Arsenal, our left-hand side like this since May 2023. And I read it and I was like, it's a bit harsh. And I was like, no, I think you might be right. I actually think you might be right. And it's unbelievable. We saw Mikel speaking in the press conference today about the benefits of strong foot fullbacks, which I don't think he's ever said explicitly before. We've seen in his football, but that's nice to sort of hear from him. So that was part of it. But for me, Calafiori, the movement off the ball, dragging defenders, the unpredictability of his underlap, his overlap, his ability to pass it off his right, which I didn't see before in terms of the angle bias, the lack of angle bias. That I think when we watched him on the scouted on the clips and stuff, and what I'd seen of him, I just felt it was a slight bias, but I'm seeing less and less of that when he's actually implementing the team. The freedom he gives himself, it opens up that entire left-hand side. It allows Martinelli to receive inside, outside, in different positions. It changes the predictability, gives Gabriel space to step into, and I want to talk about that in a second. But most of all, the thing I'm most impressed with is the personality, and Mikel kind of checked this as well. It's the personality to play. That's really the thing. When we're talking decisions in football, when we're talking, you know, he looks so good, or he's brave in a tackle, or whatever it is, you can kind of bracket all that, I think, in personality of a player. And he steps on a pitch and he's a stallion. You know, every action, he's going to drive forward, he's going to play that pass. There's this moment, it's an amazing moment where Martinelli knocks the ball into him and makes a run. And I know Calafiori's finding him off his right foot in the channel, and that little dink. First, I didn't know he could do that. And secondly, the personality to do that and to play that pass and to sort of have that chemistry with your team. And let's remember, what is he? 2 games in to starting? So, you know, there was some concerns about him yesterday in terms of the fitness. I certainly don't think it's a long-term thing, even if he's out for PSG. But that impact from Calafiori was magical, unbelievable.
Hey, there's a lot to talk about in this, because this is somebody that I wanted to talk about quite a bit of. We spent all summer looking at X Factor and looking at moments. And Mikel showed us that a center back can be that. and I joke, but I'm serious in terms of when you talk about personality, and when you say, you know, you look at a player and he's a stallion and aura, whatever synonym that you want to say from a fan's perspective. For me, it's just taking responsibility on the pitch. And you know which players do, and you know which players don't. And for me, the biggest thing that we talked about on the rewatch was his mentality, and his mentality to take responsibility in moments when there is chaos. And he steps up. And I still think that rings true. That's my favorite thing about his personality. I mean, have a look at, for example, when you think possession is going stale, there's a bit of chaos in your possession model. You have confidence Calafiore will either drop into the pivot and then carry through 3 or 4 players to carry off. He'll have a shot. There's a brilliant moment, like I think up in the air, he has a reverse volley. He will push the envelope in any situation, and he will take responsibility, and he will impose himself onto the game. And that is a maverick. He's recruited a maverick profile, and I wanted it in the final third. But he is an example of somebody that in a team is a maverick and is somebody that you can't plan for as an opposition coach, because I don't even think Calafiore knows quite what he's going to do. And that's the beauty of having artists in a team. You know, he doesn't have a clear idea on exactly the patterns. And, you know, we're going to have a lot of talk this season about will Mikel coach some of this stuff out? I don't think so. It is about refining, and I think that recruiting more players like that will build relationships that are built on those relationships and not on rigid structure. And this team has gone through a journey that me, you, and every Arsenal fan can predict our build-up patterns and the 2-3-5 or the 3-2-5. But one thing, for example, that we're not able to predict is how fluid it's become, where Thomas Partey is going to sit there and drop into right back, and Jurrien Timber mid-game is going to become the pivot along with Declan Rice, whereas at the start, that wasn't the case. And then Calafiore will take opportunity when he's going to go and perform the Zinchenko inverted role, but then at other times he's going to go on the overlap and he's going to provide an option for Martinelli to come inside. I mean, one of the biggest things, as I said, I think a couple pods ago, was people are going to start to praise Martinelli again, and it's not going to do with anything in terms of movement. It's going to have to do with what we did around him to get him closer to goal. And we're seeing it with Calafiore a little bit. Wait till Mikel Merino comes in terms of the fluidity and the flow. And, you know, I believe Mikel had a really important quote in terms of the press conference about what a strong-footed option gives us. Mate, I have been banging this drum for absolute months. You cannot have a side on the left that prioritizes angles, like having a Gabriel in center back and being the only left footer on that side. It will not work. And so having a strong-footed option, look, we can talk about the brilliance about his, you know, ambipedal nature, how his pace of pass, his passing variety, the dribbles, the carry. Yeah, it's great. It is great. And I think even Mikel talked about it. They have to have a willingness to defend, and everything else is extra. He's got the extra, but it's how he uses it and how he uses that extra. And your eyes are glued to him no matter where he is on the pitch. And it's because he is somebody that takes responsibility, and we don't have enough of those people, in my opinion, on the pitch. And by recruiting something, you start to see a little bit of what you're missing there. And it gives confidence for other people. You're going to mention Gabriel and how high he was as a center back. It comes from the confidence down that side that Calafiore's got the responsibility. And he feels that he can gamble because he's got somebody that he trusts not only to defend those spaces behind him if he does foray forward, but also he's got somebody that he trusts that is going to push the envelope in possession and another option to back him up. Far too many times last year, the left-hand side, not only was it targeted by opposition, but it was isolated as the side that Arsenal give the most space to. Now, that's going away with people like Calafiore, Mikel Merino, by the way, yet to come in. The ability to squeeze and make that space tight is what the right has had for 2 years. Now, the right has had those relationships, not even just in terms of spacing, but in terms of player relationships for 2 years. How do you think that's going to benefit a left-hand side that's been mismatched? Yeah, it's 2 games. So there's a lot of stuff to talk about. I'll just end on this with Calafiore. He is going to be a maverick. There is an X factor that we've recruited from center back that people don't want to talk about, and it's so Mikel. It is so Mikel that you're asking yourself, this team lack moments, and you bought a moments player that is a center back. It is so Mikel. But I urge people to get through that idea because he's going to give us something. And if PSG is 0-0 or 1-0, I back Calafiori to do what he did on his debut in the Champions League. Not because it's some insane skill that's repeatable, but because of his mentality to take responsibility in chaos situations. And so he's brilliant.
You say you don't think it's repeatable. I actually do, because I think
no, like in the skill, like the moment is repeatable, but the skill, it's not because he's got an Ari and Robin that you just bank on that's happening. He will create moments, and that is repeatable, but he won't do it from a particular action or a particular football skill. He will do it in a variety of ways. He'll slip in with a weak foot pass. He'll go on a carry and drop in, take out 3 to 4 players. He will at moments have a brilliant strike like he showed on his debut, but it's very varied. I don't think the skill will be repeatable, but that stepping up into moments, that will be repeatable.
Yeah, had a fantastic game. 61 of 69 passes completed, 5 passes into the final third, 2 chances created, 0.3 expected assists, 3 shots on target.
And still not my man of the match, which is crazy. 0.5
XG, 2 out of 3 successful dribbles, 3 out of 4 accurate long balls, 6 of 11 ground duels won, and 6 out of 8 aerials won. Had a fantastic game and a fantastic impact. And I think kind of what you were saying there about Mikel and sort of signing the maverickness from centre-back or full-back or whatever you want to put it. I think it's always interesting where I always think of teams as like they've got a spine. And that spine does need to, you can move it around a little bit, but there does need to be a predictability. Now that predictability can come in profile, in action, or whatever it might be. But you need certain things, or my other analogy is like did you ever play Modern Warfare 2, like Call of Duty? We have a gun and then you put attachments on it. It's like, but the gun doesn't change, but you put like a new skin on it or whatever it might be. Like you need certain things that stay the same and certain things that suit where you are on the map or whatever it is, or whichever analogy you want, right? And I think what I find interesting is it feels like, and also a question that Art de Roche asked in the press conference to Mikel was about sort of, firstly, yes, your fullbacks need to love defending, but then they've all got slightly different traits for different things. And it feels like that's what we've created, really. Almost feels like the attachments to the gun or the arms from the spine or whichever analogy you like are kind of the fullbacks. Or certainly to some degree, the fullbacks are the things that sort of change between games, are the things that we add on, we change, we move around, we go, well, for this game, this might make sense, for that game, it might make sense. And I wonder, especially when players are fit, how that kind of plays out over the course of the season. I want to come to Ben White as well a little bit later, because I think there's an interesting conversation about him. But you mentioned him earlier, Gabriel. Scott Willis had a great data viz on Gabriel, which is fantastic. I'd recommend you all go check it out. But in terms of his passes, receiving, carries, he's right up there in the final third. In terms of the passes inside, you can see all of his open play passes and shots. You can go check it out. It's really, really fascinating. And it shows Gabriel's influence. And I think there's a couple of things. I think, firstly, Gabriel has been imperious defensively. But I think what we're seeing now, without a predictable... Another thing I actually want to say as well was, if you go look back at analysis of Arsenal from like 21, 22, 23, even like my stuff, the style has changed. It used to be, here's how Arsenal play. They do this, 3-2. That's what they do, and here's how it works. No one can do that anymore. People try and do it, but I always think it's a little bit inaccurate, because I'm like, well, that's kind of true in certain aspects. But this is the thing now. I think Gabriel has been freed of that. Very predictable. Zinchenko pulls inside and has 3,000 touches. Exactly, we've been freed of that. And Calafiori can do that. Timber can do that, but they can also go on the overlap or whatever. It depends on the situation in the game. And I think because of that, the impact on that, one of the many impacts, as well as making us more unpredictable, as well as making us a better team, I would say, is giving Gabriel that space in front of him, the touches on the ball, the ability to show himself. And I always remember that phrase because it's such a you phrase, the technical aesthetic bias. Basically, because he looks a little bit clumsy, we don't rate him as much on the ball. I still think Saliba's better on the ball. But we're beginning to see, I think, because of the difference in the fullbacks on the left-hand side, the space Gabriel's afforded, the confidence that you referred to earlier, and the impact he can have on a game going forward. And this is a player who, to me, is showing that kind of complete centre-back thing. It's almost like a different version of Gabriel, and I absolutely love it.
I mean, last year, though, mate, I mean, people part of there's a huge technical aesthetic, but I feel like I should make a thread. Like that's been one thing that I've noticed on fan culture for a while right now. But on Gabriel specifically, he's also been one of the center backs that when our backs are against the wall, he's the most progressive, even with technical quality coming into play with Saliba. I mean, last year, how many times was it when it was 2-2? It was Gabriel was the ones that was being really aggressive between the lines to hit people. He's always been somebody that is willing, at least on the floor. I don't think he's ever shown us that kind of long switch ability that he did show at Lille, and that like varied passing, like regularly enough. And even the chipped pass in that left-hand corner to basically get over the top of teams is something that he showed in moments last season, but it isn't something that I would say that he does regularly. A lot of the stuff that, at least from a progression standpoint, that really is good about Gabriel is that on the floor between the lines pass where he does take the ball and he does take responsibility in terms of doing it. And because he's a little bit of an ugly duckling of sort, we don't highlight that bravery and that ability. It's not just personality, it's flat out ability. He is very good at it. He's very good at progressing between the lines. And I think we've seen a lot more instances, mate, of Mikel willing for the center backs to go 1v1 and be outnumbered. And the way that he was so aggressively positioned in this game, it really was Saliba defending the halfway line on his own. And Gabriel would step up. Yeah. And not just Vardy, but it was the space, mate. We always leave two people back there. We saw it versus Man City. This wasn't just a Leicester thing. We have left our center backs or even our fullbacks to defend 1v1 a lot more. And we're pushing people up and we're squeezing the pitch and we're creating other lanes, mate. You know, we're creating that sixth lane. I think Gabriel is somebody that's been here since the start of Mikel's journey. And if there's one player that has consistently played to really get the impact of Mikel, Gabriel, for me, is going to go down as his best coaching job. If you actually have a look at overall the process, you want to call it, with the team, he is an extension of that. He came in an imperious defender. He came in as somebody that you knew duel-wise, there's nothing that you have to teach Gabriel about aggression. Now, there's some things we've got to teach you about angles, positioning, how you angle your body approaching a duel to be more successful. There's a lot of stuff that we had to teach him. Receiving on the back foot, playing balls when varied. He still isn't 100% there. We even saw against Man City, there's a moment in the first 10 to 15 minutes, actually, where I think Gabriel struggles technically. But then he evolves and he's a lot more confident. And we start to see a fit Gabriel that, for me, takes 3 to 4 games a season, along with Declan Rice, by the way, who I thought was incredible in this match as well.
Oh, my God.
Those two are players, for me, that take 5 games in a season to iron out the cobwebs. Then, when they're there, and they're ever present. Now, Gabriel, the narrative is going to be, because for the next 8 months, he's going to be perfect. And that's not something that you could talk about with Gabriel. And so, yeah, the journey that he's been on has been something really analogous to the team, I think, in general. And he's a very important player in terms of how Arsenal are going to deal with situations, not just at the back, but in the final third. He is somebody that contributes quite a bit in the final third. Mate, he almost scored another goal, you know, off a set piece that he was very unlucky not to score on. And to have somebody that guarantees you 5 to 10 goals a season off set pieces, 5 to 10 goals off his passes alone, the attacking value added by a center back is huge.
It's huge. It's huge. It's huge. And you're absolutely right to say it's analogous to Mikel. You know, that I think there's an argument he is the symbol of Mikel's project.
Yeah.
There's absolutely, you know, okay, there might be players who are more flashy or have had bigger moments, whatever it might be, but in terms of a symbol of the development of the team, in terms of a symbol of just hard work, consistency, availability, development, mate, he's had an unbelievable thing. And you know, also to add to the list you gave earlier, controlled aggression as well. the development in his ability to step out. You know, do you remember that game against Southampton where he just clatters Theo Walcott? Yeah. That is, you know, of course he has that strength now. Clattered Mikel Merino in the first training session, but there's a control to it now that he's grown and learned. And I'm so excited to see this sort of next phase for him and sort of how it all develops. If he gets some time and some consistent time, well, let's say it is Merino, Calafiori and Gabriel on that side, the influence he has, what might change in terms of the outside perception, the quality he has. You know, we might see him more on the underlap and stuff. I think there's a real. Can
I ask you really quickly with that point? Can you project that development of controlled aggression with Calafiori? And I'm going to ask you, what do you get as a player?
I hope so, because he nearly got sent off on Saturday. He was. I think he was a touch lucky, and I can't imagine.
Well, he's raw. We talked about this in the Scouted, so I'm not worried. But I am saying, imagine that development arc with the base that you had technically of a Calafiori. I'm looking at somebody that could be a reference center back prototype, and I think he's got a really good leader there to talk to and a mentor, really. Yeah.
Anything on the incidents? I mean, the Martinelli goal is a nice assist from Timber. Trossard, I love that Trossard just seems to be one of the only players in our squad who has that kind of stretching toe. He doesn't do it for the goal, but he hits the post. He has this sort of stretching toe poke finish that we don't quite have. Obviously gets the. I don't know who's actually awarded the goal at the end.
Was it own goal? I think
DD or yeah. But look, incident-wise, I don't know whether there's loads of meat on the bone in terms of the goals and stuff. They felt like sort of outcomes of processes more than anything. But yeah, if there's anything you want to talk about on there, be my guest.
I'm a nerd, but we almost scored the exact Trossard goal 5 minutes before. No.
The one before. Oh, yeah, sorry.
Within the game. Trossard actually, he starts at the far end of the box. It's another in-swinging corner from Bukayo Saka. And Trossard realizes he has to be at the back post, and he lumbers. I urge people to walk on it. And it doesn't come off. It just goes out for another corner. But I thought, oh crap, that's the goal. That is the exact process that we used with Trossard being a blindside run. And what we're doing, not to give away our secrets, but we've got 3 to 4 big aerial duels that all overload the back post. And consistently, it's Martinelli, Trossard, that is in that group, but hangs back. So they are the ones that make the dummy run to overload the keeper. And it would be the mix zone. But our target is always the high efficiency finisher back post. And it's always Trossard or Martinelli. And I urge people to really have a look at it. And you're going to see the same thing on the right. It's just Saka is the one that's doing it. And we have our finisher outside the big lumps that do carry threat. And it's why Gabriel, by the way, has so many goals. So it's not just that. But we have the high efficiency finisher that's going to be a little bit of a ghost marker in the back. And that's the target. That's the target when all else fails.
Yeah, well, it's certainly another threat. Obviously, Gabriel sometimes in that back group, or sometimes running from the front of the box. Another development I've seen at the corners this season is, I don't know exactly what rules change with the whole Ben White on the goalkeeper stuff, but this thing where Martinelli's backing into goalkeepers and sort of creating a ring, it's so smart. It's such good use of the rules. I just think it's brilliant. It's really, really good from Nico Yova. And yeah, I just felt with the 2 goals, especially for them, they're going to happen. I know we sort of said it at the top. The only thing I'd say, is I felt there was a period at the top of the second half where our intensity dropped off. I'm not saying it's okay. I'm saying I understand it because of the game state where we were having scored and gone in at 2-0. I think Trossard could arguably mark that runner, but we're absolutely not, because he'd swapped with Martinelli and he was basically, I think he was ambling around a little bit, so sort of 5 minutes before. He could have marked James Justin, but to be honest, it's one of those things where if that goal doesn't go, it's an unbelievable finish, and if it doesn't go in, well, I'm not talking about Trossard being unintense out of possession. So for me, there's no real lessons from those goals personally. I just felt really strongly that we were going to come back, and luckily we did.
The first one is a complete fluke. There's nothing to talk about there. It's the deflection. I mean, David Raya has an easy save with that, and it's well marked by Kai. It's a poor action. It happens. The second goal, it's difficult. It is preventable for me. Calafiori's distances are off again. in terms of marking. I'd go back. He's far too sucked into the middle, and he leaves that space open really quite big. He has to be a little bit over, but he's a little bit sucked in by the play. Also, the deep cross could be defended better in terms of Leicester were always going to break and create transition to create space because they didn't have the technical quality to outmatch us when matched. So if we have numbers on a side, the goal for me was always quick switch out to the other side, or quick switch and transition for Vardy to outbest Saliba, or quick switch somewhere because we don't have the quality to outnumber you when in possession. And I think the cross could have been stopped. In fact, Calafiori makes that point on the rewatch. If you have a look back after we concede, he's having a go at the opposite side for allowing the cross to come in, period. Now, for me, he has to do better. I think letting the cross go is a little bit of a lower end mistake. It's something that you don't want. As defenders, you have to stop those crosses from coming in, but it's a fairly innocuous cross. I mean, you're going to see that 25 times a game. And part of this analysis is also, it's a world-class strike. So while I think Calafiori, while he can do better on distances, I don't think James Justin is going to have a hit like that in his career again.
No. He's credited with 2 goals from Saturday, which is crazy. I would weight it a little bit more towards Trossard, I can't lie, but it's probably a sort of split job there. But yeah, let's move forward. Probably the only other thing that I want to discuss from Saturday is Martinelli. We discussed him before. I will be honest, and again, I said this on the instant reaction, and I still don't want to have it now because we're in the glow, and I kind of want to just let this thing play out a little bit more. I still don't know the connection between the role Mikel's asking Martinelli to play and the profile and how that matches, because right now I'm not 100% sure it does, but I genuinely don't want to have the conversation because he needs confidence, he needs rhythm, and I want to look at that and sort of praise that. I think we saw a massive increase. I think he misses a chance very early doors that he probably should put away. I can't quite remember it now, but I remember him missing a chance. I remember
he was slipped in from Bukayo Saka, and then it goes high.
That was it. Poor first. It was a slightly under hit, but he should take a better first touch. And yeah, he goes high, similar to the finishes against Atalanta. But I think that moment, that almost instinctual finish from the Timber cut back, because I think he thinks it's going to be cut out, and then he just swivels his body and goes in. You can see when he's not thinking about it, he just finishes. It's just who he is, which is so nice. Then from there, because of Calafiori's runs off the ball, because of the positions he was picking up, I think Martinelli felt a lot more free. It felt to me like he was enjoying his game because he's not the one being expected to do certain things every single action, every single time. He's not the one receiving out high and wide every single time. There's a bit more variety. There's a bit more unpredictability, and I think he thrives on that. I will say, I anticipate, or maybe I'm projecting onto you what you might say, which is this is all coming from what's changing around him, and think about Mourinho going forward. I do think Martinelli, there are some conversations about him as a player and the actions themselves. I don't think we can ignore that personally, but I think it's a big step forward, and I was really pleased for him, because I think that if I had to draw up a list of the things that Martinelli needed, the number one thing would have been confidence and that ability just to not think when you finish, because he's been in those positions as well, and not quite made it pay, but he did on Saturday.
Couple things. So remember last season we were having a discussion that you felt like he wasn't able to go on the outside enough?
Yep.
What did you think of this game?
Well, there's going on the outside and there's going on the outside. What I feel with
Martinelli,
he was
brilliant. He was running James Justin ragged on the outside. He was taking him on the outside. There was a lot of unpredictability. It's not to say that I'm not bringing that up to say that now he's a suddenly perfect winger for what we need. What I'm bringing it up for is movement opens angles. Now, it still is not the perfect trait that I want for him, but he's doing it, and he did it in spades in the match on Saturday. But beyond that, that's the movement point that I always talk about, which opens up new avenues. Now, the point on confidence is really important because, I mean, obviously his actions and, his decision-making in the final third has not always been good. And that's on him on an individual level. This conversation is not one-sided. There's nuance to it. There's individual faults that he needed to improve on, and then there's system. But have a look at his heat map in this match. How close to goal is it? How close are his actions to goal? That is system. getting him into positions to receive. Now, what he does in those zones, that's individual. No problem. We can sit there, we can debate, we can talk about the coaching things that he needs to do to improve himself when there. But the fact that he's got a heat map so heavily weighted inside to the box is the point. Because last year, his heat map was by the touchline, chalking boots and very deep. Now, that change is important. And I think that's what we saw yesterday. And by the way, Calafiori and him, you know why he's enjoying himself, mate? They're getting a relationship. Not just do we see it. He's looking for him. Did you remember that no look outside? Like, it's a beautiful switch by Calafiori, but he gets in the middle and there's just a no look sweeping pass that he makes out to the left wing because he knows Martinelli is going to be there and chase that.
With the right foot.
Yes.
Yeah, it's the one I said earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, there's that. And then there's also the one with his left foot. It's just a beautiful curl, too, in the first half. Like, he receives, and it's just an instinctual hit after us building on the right. And he's just hitting to space because he knows Martinelli's there. Martinelli never had that last year consistently enough. He really didn't. Because his role was receive high and wide, recycle. Receive high and wide, recycle, hold your position, become defensive. But now he has got, in the same way that Gabriel, the center back, has got flexibility to step up and join into the final third. Martinelli feels he's got somebody to fill in. And I think that trust will be even greater with Mikel Merino in the team. And
it's going to change so much. And this is why I don't want to heavily labor on the things Martinelli could individually do, because I think there's so much to see from systemically, which I think you're so right about. As I say, I still have some concerns about him, individually, but that I hope with the better conditions, those things will be assuaged. I feel like at the moment, maybe what's happening is we're trying to sort of, or maybe I am, or certain people are trying to equate them as two things. I think one underlays the other. Underpins the other. I think the system will naturally improve his decision making, even if his decision making is a concern. Do you see what I mean? I think they're not necessarily sort of two parallel things. I think it's sort of one on top of the other. But yeah, basically with him, I'm really looking forward to wait and see, because I think especially with Merino coming back, which I don't think is too far away, by the way. Certainly from the conversations that I've seen from Mikel, sort of next couple of weeks, he's sort of going, we won't have anyone back in the next 24, 48 hours, which is an interesting way of putting it. You would just say he's weeks away, wouldn't you? So I think hopefully within
he's back for the weekend, personally, Mikel Merino.
Yeah. I hope so, or certainly on the bench. I know he's been involved in partial training and so on and so forth. So yeah, no, 100% looking forward to that.
Can we just quickly touch on the assist? Because I actually think that's the best action of Martinelli in the entire game. His assist for the goal, and Trossard.
Well, Calafiori jumps on it straight away.
He loves
it.
Because how head up is it? That's the Martinelli. Like, when you're talking about individual decision, it's not that I feel that he doesn't have the ability to do it. It's that he doesn't make that decision consistently enough, which, by the way, is still bad. Like, let me be clear. Like, okay, it's not that you don't have the ability, but if you're not doing it, you're not doing it, and we're not seeing it. But I wanted to highlight that point because his entire thing, he's dribbling and he's coaxing James Justin, but his head is up.
Yep.
The entire time when he's doing it. And then that little toe poke inside for Trossard, it's he makes the goal. That for me is the best action, because Martinelli at his worst is somebody that is so hyper focused on his action with his head down that he's not able to see that pass, and he's not able to see those situations in the space. But with his head up, it's a huge development, and that's why the assist comes out. So I think, keep going, mate. I think that you're going to find yourself in that situations. Yeah,
keep going, sunshine.
Look, hey, MLS's mom listens to this, so you never know.
You never know. Hi, MLS's mum. Let's move past the Leicester game, because lots to take away from that, and I think just overall stepping back as well from the sort of the micro, so important to get those points when, especially on I think, again, you can overlay too much of this on the team, and I think this is more of a fan thing, but just from my perspective, it's so nice when City drop points to take that advantage just for the narrative, and just to being a fan and going, whoo, and like enjoying the weekend, having that.
It also isn't just narrative; it's also just factually what you need.
Of course.
So I don't want to belay, because I don't want to like come down on fans that I felt like the only thing in the moment is, I think people, if you have a chance to rewatch, please do. You'll learn a lot from the game. The team never panicked, but that's not to say that the points weren't important. Like, it is not to say that, we absolutely needed to capitalize. And so, all that stuff is still rings true.
For sure, for sure. We're recording on Monday afternoon, and tomorrow afternoon we have PSG in the Champions League, which I'm really, really looking forward to, seeing us up against some good opposition, especially at the Emirates. I don't know the team at all. Have you watched them?
No, I haven't watched them.
To be honest, I think it's probably not worth us doing some big preview on them then. So if you need that, you need to go elsewhere, unfortunately. But subscribe first. But I'm really looking forward to seeing what we do, seeing us up against that opposition. I think Ousmane Dembele has been dropped for some kind of disciplinary issue, so that's probably an advantage us, which is really nice. I'm looking forward to seeing what he puts out. As we speak, there's some issues on Calafiori and White. I can't anticipate Marino or Ødegaard being there. Obviously, Tomiyasu's still not available. Zinchenko's still not available. But what's really nice is that 6 pretty big players for us, George. I'm still pretty confident. I think this is what we've had before. And I think it's Clive who uses this phrase, Clive on the Arsenal Vision, talks about false depth. And I think that's what's really changed this season. It feels like we have proper depth. So to be honest, I'm looking forward to tomorrow, whatever team we put out, and hopefully we can put in a good performance.
Yeah, I think the people in contention are going to be fine, to be honest with you. Even the way that Mikel phrased in the press conference that he was emotional after the game in terms of talking about Calafiori, it seemed to me that was a manager of saying, you're fine. And
you're emotional.
Yeah, you're whinging a bit. Yeah, he's fine. But yes, he's in, and he has a late fitness test.
It's that thing of you ever when I at primary school where you'd like hurt your knee and the teacher would get a wet paper towel.
Yeah,
and you're like, there you go, you're fine.
That's exactly what it is.
Except this is a compression tissue, whatever the phrase is. What's what they call compression sock? That's it. I saw it with him in the mix zone.
Yeah. So I think it'll be fine. Look, I'm excited for PSG because, mate, no matter what, these are big teams. You love these games, and
huge.
Really excited. The one thing I will say, and I'll make this point, I don't know about you, I do think it's going to be a concern long term, but I actually trust us away more than I do at home in big moments. And I felt that way for a while. I do need our home form to become more inevitable. I am very confident that Arsenal will show up away to do what's needed to win. I find sometimes at home, our play is labored. Even for me, like the worst Porto match was at home more than it was away. The worst Bayern match was at home versus away. I think in Europe, I look back, Olympiacos, when we should have won. Home, that game still haunts me. Our home form in Europe is something that I really want to see improve a bit. And not just the results. I'm talking about our way of playing, our intensity. I find at times we get lulled into a sense of, we're at home, we'll dominate. And I want us to be a bit more purposeful and a bit more clinical in our transitions. I find a way we're very good at having that mentality, and it's been drilled into us. And I just think there's just a slight difference at home that I'd like to see us overcome.
No, I hear that. Let's move to some questions. Thank you guys so much. So before every pod at the moment, we're putting something out on X, but also on our Discord server. I realise there's a hack to get on our Discord server for free, George. Should I say it on the pod? I don't think I should. We need to talk about it after. But thank you to all our Discord members. We've got 200 people in there now. People who've been making it happen, and loads of people chatting in there now, which is really, really nice. So thank you guys so much for being in there. We'll start on X. We'll come to this question from Christopher Graham, who is at ChrisG3689, who says, do you think there's a risk in fans underappreciating certain players? For example, Rice. I think some have begun to see the great qualities he brings to us as part of the furniture and not fully appreciate him in the way we would a Saka, Saliba, or an Ødegaard. I think, interested in your take on this, I think there's kind of 2 levels of appreciation. There's the kind of the meta, the player, and then there's the what's happening in the here and now. And because of the speed of the news cycle, because there's so much aggressive, there's such a competitive space to get analysis out there, we're constantly reevaluating players. A player will have a poor half, and we're going, well, not sure about that future at the club, and they'll have a good half, and they go, well, he's set for the next 10 years. Then the thing that what we talk about can change so quickly. I do think most reasonable people who aren't getting their views, killed on X or whatever it might be, do really appreciate Declan Rice. But I also think most serious and sensible people would say there's probably a little bit more we can get out of him. By the way, which we started to see against Leicester. Those switches have gone. I wish someone. I haven't seen anyone do it, but I hope someone's put a comp out there, and I hope it's going around somewhere, because the accuracy, the fade, the consistency on them. If we can get him deeper, receiving off the centre backs in those sorts of zones and playing those passes, especially, I think I looked at our numbers earlier in terms of our field tilt. There's a whole other conversation about whether our approach at the moment is wanting to be trying to break teams down in the final third, or we're willing to go a little bit further back and be a little bit more direct. But that's a whole other conversation for another day. But yeah, I think it's separating out the sort of the meta conversation about Declan Rice. People know this is a brilliant player, and the game-to-game, day-to-day conversation where, yeah, things can go, oh, we're getting the most out of Rice, or we're all having these constant conversations about it, and there's this sort of constant reevaluation, which I don't know, you can get lost in, I think.
No doubt. I think shock narrative is something that absolutely has an impact. It's a joke. It's a joke, everybody. Look, I do think
you're right. It does have an impact, but it's just defining what it is, which we'll come to in a second.
I'd love to have a temperature gauge of what Declan Rice at the Euros was, and ask that question then.
Yeah.
Let's ask that question now, and let's ask it in 2 months when Mikel Merino's back, and what you're seeing with Declan Rice back in the center. Fans, our job is to be, so I don't want to come down on people. Our job is to be reactionary. So that's their job, but it's not their career. And I think Declan Rice, when you talk about the switches, mate, he's talked about it in interviews. I mean, he's world class at switches. He always has been. Yeah. And that's what he did at West Ham all the time. And the critique was, for example, last year, this is one time where I feel like as professionals, and as we get really good and as we become champions, there's going to be this narrative that comes down that you're not allowed to critique the team because it's a champion. It's going to come with it. And the switches, mate, it's the clearest example of a mistake for me that I've ever seen. Everybody called it last season. Everybody was looking for it. And to go from 17th to even 6th in the league now, what does that show you? It's a directive that we've clearly said we needed to improve on as a whole. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because the same's going to happen with Declan Rice in terms of right now he's receiving a little bit outside the block, and he's in a role right now that he isn't central in. And there's going to be concerns. And that's why people, when they talk about the Euros, they talk about other things. You're seeing him in a role that maybe doesn't accentuate his qualities, and then you start doubting the player. And I wouldn't call it underrated. I'd call it, how do you say it nicely? Like, I call it reactionary conclusion. Let's put it that way, to what you're seeing in the moment. And there's going to be a lot of analysis about what you're seeing versus why you're seeing it. And the why is not being talked about in media. It's not being talked about in fan discourse on it. And so maybe that's why it's underrated and why you keep seeing comments about it, because the why is not defined, but the what. Hey, he's not doing this. He's not making the marauding run. He's not being man of the match. He's not scoring the big moment, so he must be crap. Now, that definitely happens. Now, is that fair? No.
And also, we'll come to this in a second, but does that really actually have any impact on anyone on a real level on a match day? I really don't think it does, but we can come back to that. Question from Bread Chair, again on the Discord, a very good question. Another good question. What's Ben White's next step back into the team? Same as before or something a bit different? Also, is he not playing as much as Ødegaard is out? Also, is he not playing as Ødegaard is out and he is key in those triangles? I think with Ben White, I have seen quite a few people talking about this, and there's some people sort of ready to get rid of him.
Ridiculous.
Quite quickly, which is pretty mental to me. Look, first and foremost, there's a lot of football to be played. There's a lot of football, and things can change so fast. Injuries, suspensions, all that sort of stuff. I think the idea that Mikel Arteta, whatever you think, the idea that Mikel Arteta is just jettisoning Ben White now because he's got like an issue with his calf or whatever it might be is extremely premature. There is, though, a conversation that I'm willing to have about sort of how we get the most out of him and what we do, and is he going to be there every single game against every single opposition in every single context? No, but I would say that was already an issue. That was an issue because you can't play Ben White for 60, 70 games a season. We have to find different solutions and find different ways of doing things. But Ben White, in terms of the combinations he has on that side, in terms of his abilities to step inside, which he's developing, in terms of the chemistry he's got with Saka, where he puts Saka, we don't have anyone on that side who can do that in that same way. Timber can do different things, and you can look at his key passing numbers and whatever. If you think that's where the spaces are that day, do it. But there's also things that Ben White can do that Jurrien Timber can't. And I think this, I think we're playing that sort of first 11 FIFA thing in our head where we go, oh, we've seen that now, that's then in for the next 10 years. And it never, ever, ever, ever happens. So yeah, I just think we need to slow that conversation down a little bit.
It's been ridiculous. Every time people begin to question Ben White, we find out he's playing on one hamstring. Every freaking time. And it's so annoying to me. It really is. My only retort is I'll say, you could argue Ben White is analogous to the most changed position in Mikel Arteta's system. There is no other player in the squad that is trusted more than Ben White across the face of Arsenal's career. Ben White is asked to be an overlapper. He's asked to be a center back. He's asked to invert. He's asked to do all those things at once. So we've created the Ben White role. There is not a more trusted player in the squad than Ben White for Mikel Arteta, especially in the back line. And so to get rid of that for me is something that's very strange. I think the point about having different tools is an important point. But that's the case I would make with every player in the squad, by the way. There's only 3 players in the squad.
Saka can't play 60 games a season, so we need to find a different solution. You know what I mean?
100%. And then there's going to be... Now, he will always play, but every player in the squad, the whole benefit of having a brilliant squad, by the way, when you look at the Invincibles, okay, you had Thierry Henry and Bergkamp, right? We had Wiltord, Kanu. You look at that striker list; those could start for the title challengers. By the way, that quality, Kanu, Wiltord, they were brilliant players. Yeah. So this idea, we got to stop the player wars, and it won't happen. My pleas will fall on deaf ears, but fans do this far too often. Ben White's fine; he's injured. He's legitimately injured, and I think what annoys me is I will always defend Ben White to the hill, because he's legitimately had sample where he's played on one hamstring. This isn't even me being exaggerative for Arsenal. And I'm very annoyed when you have such a key pillar. And you talk about the triangles. The one thing that I will say for me on it, the Ben White aspect is that dynamism in terms of that on the outside, and that dynamism in terms of what he offers you on the outside. That's something that both the left and the right will need at some point. Calafiore is showing you that on the left in this one game. You're going to need that from fullbacks. Yeah. And when you talk about flow, that's the big thing that you're going to need. Now, Jurrien Timber can do aspects of it. The one thing I will say is maybe we isolate games like Rashford. We have Jurrien Timber step in, who we know that he has a tough time against. Like, that's fine. But by the way, Jurrien Timber's going to struggle against other opposition. For example, I would argue Leicester is perfect Ben White territory. It wasn't Jurrien Timber. Now, he played well, and he did very well, but I 100% would prefer Ben White over Jurrien Timber against a low block like that is looking to create space on the outside so that we can get Saka inside. It is different strokes for different folks, and that is going to be the thing that we will need.
And also the final thing I'll only add is the soft aspect, which is that Mikel says, like, you have to tell Ben to go and sit down, and having someone like that in the team, having someone who just is resilient, will fight, and is available. Like it's not to say if it's not working you don't change it, but just to remove that from the team and to jettison that player off the back of what? Like, I just think it's a pretty silly thing. George, we should finish. Well, let's have a quick debrief about this debate, because there was a huge feedback. So first and foremost, thank you guys so much for the feedback. And we want to, George and I so rarely disagree on stuff that it's something we want to do. And we're not going to manufacture anything. We're not going to, to find a place to disagree for no reason. But when we do disagree, because we see the game pretty similarly, obviously, different perspectives, but we agree on a lot of stuff. It's kind of interesting. But I just want to say a few things if that's all right. I think first and foremost, reflecting, because, you know, a lot of the feedback was quite critical and negative towards me, and that's fine. I'm a big boy, I can take it. And a lot of it, I will say, was very although it was critical, it was respectful on a personal level. So I genuinely really appreciate that. I maybe didn't, on self-reflection, I maybe didn't do a good enough job of explaining maybe my difference between what I think is kind of fun defending the club, which I love doing, and I'm a hypocrite, by the way, because I will go, oh, they're after Arsenal, whatever, and clear-eyed analysis, which is what I think our job is on this, is to provide a proper analysis, and also to genuinely say what we think. Even if I know I'm going to get cooked, which I did, I knew that was going to happen, I'm going to say what I think, because I think you guys deserve that. So yeah, maybe I didn't sort of separate out that I know I'm a hypocrite on this topic, and that's fine. But then there's a difference between that and proper analysis. And also, I haven't really changed my opinion apart from one thing, because a couple of people made some really good points about where the narratives are. And I was saying there's narratives about every single team, but someone pointed out, and I think it's a very good point, that Arsenal's narrative is a lot on the pitch. You could talk about narratives with Liverpool and United, whatever it is, and on the pitch. So I concede that. The only thing I'd say on that is, again, this all comes back to how much you think the conversation around football, the stuff that fans are saying, the stuff that the media is saying, is directly impacting on the pitch. Now, that is ultimately a piece of string question. Neither you nor I will ever know exactly how much that impacts on the pitch, unless you could do some inside the players' heads and referees' heads analysis. There's no way of knowing it. We can only guess. My opinion is it's quite small, and others will disagree. But I just want to finish with this. I could not respect George anymore. And the only comments that annoyed me were the ones that were sort of saying that I wasn't listening. Over the course of a debate, you are going to get people wrong. I got George wrong, and George got me wrong. That happens over the course of the debate. It absolutely happens. I love this beautiful Canadian man. And I did reply to a few people. But yeah, those are the only ones that upset me, because I can take a debate. But the ones that did annoy me were sort of suggesting that I was being rude or disrespectful to George. Like, look, it's going to happen over the course of the debate. You're going to get each other wrong. But that's the one thing I wanted to say. I love this man, and I respect him so much. And that was the only ones that saddened me, just to say that.
Yeah, no, like, I mean, there's a throuple in my life, and and there's competing interests. But look, it all comes from a place of respect at the end of the day. And I hope that people can maybe use the debate. It's not a matter of who wins or who loses and on differences of opinions, but can maybe use that as how to debate, because it comes from a place of trust. And not to put words in your mouth, but, you know, this is something that you've said even in the debate. The fact that you feel the trust that you can have this conversation with me speaks more to our relationship than the disagreement.
And that was the one that people say, oh, you're being... I'm like, God, like, I wish you guys... We talk all day, every day. Like, yeah. Come on.
And look, and let's be clear. Like, I still am very confident in my opinion. We're both strong, confident analysts that we feel a certain way about the game. And it would be disingenuous for us not to show you, the audience, the times when we disagree. And but yeah, I would just end on, I love you as well. It all comes from a place of total respect. And the one thing that I did want to praise the community. Guys, like, in general, we genuinely read every comment. The only reason I haven't replied as much is because I felt like, as a debate, when you've got someone coming on you, which I think Alex had at that point, it will come across as me defending Alex. No matter what I say, I could be agreeing with you. It will come across a certain way. I just wanted to say, I thought that the comments were, for the most part, there's always a range. It's the internet. But for the most part, there was just a lot of really intelligent commentary that I saw from it. And it's brilliant. I think the community that we've built, it surprises me every time that we're able to have this type of nuance and these type of conversations, and it not come from a place of, well, you're just an idiot. Even though there is going to be some of that. Yeah,
there's a couple of that. But yeah, and I will say, I want to just echo that. It's so nice to, like, have that engagement and feel you guys, you know, really listening and having brilliant opinions and stuff. And yeah, round 2 soon. But yeah, we'll finish there. It's a good place to finish, because yeah, genuinely, we really appreciate the community we're building here. And yeah, you guys know we're trying to push the levels on. Good place to say we've got a very interesting pod coming out on Wednesday, which we'll reveal more closer to the time. We've got some specialist pods coming out soon. We'll do a sort of scouted rewatch and stuff during the week. We've got an instant reaction coming out to PSG. It's a very good time to not exploit the loophole about the the Discord, but if you want to get on there, you can join the Discord and join and get all that ad-free stuff as well. But George, pleasure as always.
Pleasure as always, good sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you guys for watching, and thanks for keeping it Arsenal.